I'm back with another one of these. Crazy, right? Seeing as I go several months at a time without putting out a video. And now this, if I played my cards right, is my fourth one in like a week or two, however long I decide to put these up. You'll know more than I do because I'm talking to you from the past, and you'll see this upload in the future. So as you can see from the title of this video, that I'm going to talk about the underrated games of the decade, much like I did with the movies one, where I'm going to talk wildly and completely uneducated on whether or not games are actually unpopular or not. I feel pretty confident about my list this time. This one does not conclude Rango on it twice. I can guarantee that. Number 10, Next Machina, which was on my favorite games of the year last year. It's just a real fantastic arcade shooter with like a voxel art, like 3D voxel art. Fantastic to look at. Amazing soundtrack. Ton of fun to play. It's one of those games that just it's a video game. Shoot the guys, save the people, get the big score, write your name on the scoreboard. Not trying to be some highfalutin, my daughter's sick storyline. It's just shoot things. It might be on Steam. It's on PlayStation 4 for sure. It's by Housemarque. Everything they do is just, it's good. And Next Machina is no different. So check it out. Number 9, I'm going to tell you something I've heard hundreds of other people say, but I don't know if it's sunk in or not. And it's Tales of the Borderlands is the best Telltale game. It unfortunately has two things going against it, which one, it's a Telltale game when people were kind of starting to get sick of them, and it's also attached to Borderlands when people were kind of getting sick of Borderlands. But somehow, the writers of this one, they just hit it out of the park, because they made me pick up a Telltale game and like Borderlands again, something I thought impossible. This one is way more on the silly than the serious, and I think that's what helps it. The serious stuff is just like constantly weighing you down all the other games. So for this one to just be like, let's just give Troy Baker a microphone and let him ad-lib for 5 games in a row. I mean, it worked. It's a great game. Highly recommended if you not even if you like that type of game. Just play it anyway. You'll have some good goofs, some laughs. Number 8, going away from the sillies, is Spec Ops The Line, a game that if you talk to me in any situation for a little too long, I'm gonna bring up Spec Ops The Line. And I'm sorry to everyone I've ever done that to. It's a game that you can't tell anyone about it. You can just say it's good, because it is. It's obviously, it's a little more dated now and came out in like 2011, 2012. So if you were to play it now, it might be a little weak on the gameplay front, because that's what aging does to video games. But the story is still like, I haven't seen many things handle a story like Spec Ops does. It's just a very unique story. Definitely not for sillies. It's definitely a little more serious than that. 7 is Mad Max, which I believe was another game on my list of favorite games last year. I didn't think I'd like the game. I'd seen other people play it back closer to when the game came out. It just didn't look like it was for me. And boy golly, just driving around the desert, beating up punks and driving cars. I mean, you just feel cool. There's nothing more to it. The world is totally void of almost everything, and it's so, I don't know, it's almost like degrading. There's nothing there. Everything it's desolate and sad, and I think it's it's Mad Max. It's kind of supposed to be. It's the point. But when you get into camps and you start throwing punches at people, and doing cool wrestling moves, it's the dumb stuff like that that gets people like me excited. It's sort of your standard open world. You go to the point, you get the thing, you light up the map, it tells you more things to do. Pretty standard game formula, but it's just fun to play. I didn't care about the plot. In fact, I think I checked out or skipped every cutscene because I just didn't care what was happening. I just wanted to play the video game. Driving in the desert, ramming vehicles, customizing vehicles, throwing harpoons at people, and dragging them along your car. It's the stuff that just doesn't get old. So, I imagine you can probably pick up Mad Max for like dirt cheap now. Because it went on sale pretty quick after it came out, because I don't think it sold very well. So, definitely get Mad Max. Number 6 is the least talked about Final Fantasy game, World of Final Fantasy. It's more akin to like a Pokemon than it is a Final Fantasy, but it's still like, it's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, probably. Probably the best, I guess you'd consider it a spin-off game. It's probably my favorite spin-off Final Fantasy title. You just play as these brother and sister, and you can either be like normal anime-sized or like tiny chibi-sized, and you go out and fight and recruit classic Final Fantasy monsters. Because that's a series, it's been around for so long, there's so many, I don't know if I can say iconic monsters, because if you were to show someone I don't know, I can't even think of one off the top of my head. Like, I guess a behemoth is probably their most, like, staple. I don't know how many people would recognize it. Maybe a little more now, because didn't they put one in Monster Hunter? Yeah, most people who aren't familiar with the franchise aren't going to be able to recognize, oh, that's from Final Fantasy. But if you are like me and are a big fan of Final Fantasy, they've got enemies that they've been using for decades. So to be able to get, like, cute versions of these and collect and fight with them, that's super cool. Super cool for me. You could collect, like, even the summonings, like the classic summons, like you get your, and I'm probably going to get flagged for some of these pronunciations, but fight me. You get like your Shiva, your Ifrit, your Roma, and then like your classic monsters, like your Tonberry, your Cactuar, the Behemoth. How this game takes the Pokemon, I'll just call it the Pokemon formula for convenience sake, and kind of almost literally puts it on its head, is when you are anime-sized, we'll call it, you're considered like medium, and so you can take two, you can put two small creatures and put them on your head and wear them as hats. Or if you're chibi-sized, you can ride on a large creature, like a behemoth, and then put one tiny little guy as a hat. And so the game, you and the enemies have like this topple mechanic where it's like, if you take too much damage or certain types of damage, it's like, oh no, your hat's gonna fall off. But your hat's actually an adorable squirrel. And to me, that sentence alone sells this whole franchise. Or, I guess not franchise, this game. It's just a good Final Fantasy game. And I think because it's technically a spin-off, it didn't get the eyes that it probably deserves. So, go out, get World of Final Fantasy. 5 is The Order 1886, a game I will always mention on lists like this to justify me buying the collector's edition back on release. So this game rightfully got some flack for being like I don't know, 80% cutscenes or something ridiculous. The game's like 7 hours long, and I think it's 5 hours of cutscenes. I might be getting the numbers off by like an hour or something, but it's admittedly pretty ridiculous. But the concept is so cool. It's, you got this old order, and they're using the old, like, Arthur names, or King Arthur names, and you go fight, like, werewolves and vampires, and it's like in a steampunky Victorian, not quite steampunky, but the concept is so strong that I don't care how many cutscenes there are. I would love to see a sequel with more gameplay. And the reason why I put it on an underrated list is, one, yeah, I think it's underrated. I don't think it did get that much attention. But two, we're pretty much guaranteed to never see a sequel if no one plays the original. So you need to play it. Because I need a sequel. Number 4 is the best UbiArt game, and that's Child of Light, a just gorgeously styled 2D adventure turn-based RPG. I mean, for me, probably deserves a replay. I don't really remember it that well anymore. I just remember loving it and no one talking about it. Especially, I do remember that the game's got some, like, pretty clear sequel bait, and we then just never heard anything, which tells me the game didn't do well enough, especially when talking about a company like Ubisoft, who, they want their returns. So if you sell 7 copies, they're probably not going to give it a sequel. Just looking up screenshots of this game, like, look up, go to Google right now. Don't close this video. Just another tab. You can do both at once. And just, try to, like, type that in. See the art, and if that doesn't sell you on trying this game out, I don't know what else to tell you. Number 3 is the semi-forgotten PS3 Sly Cooper game, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. So I am a big Sly Cooper fan. I love Sly Cooper. I always had. Of the like PlayStation mascot characters, Sly was always my favorite. I'm a fan of all 3 of the original PS2 games. So years and years later, developed by a different studio, we get this new Sly Cooper game. And I think this one was developed by Sanzaru Games, if I recall correctly, who I think was a new studio at the time. So I didn't really have any reason to expect this would be good, but it's a great Sly Cooper game. If you're familiar with the Sly Cooper franchise, it's like he has his book, The Thievius Raccoonus, and you talk about all of the great Coopers throughout history. You get your cowboy one, and your Egyptian pharaoh one, and your ninja and samurai, and all these cool, different, unique raccoon characters. With Thieves in Time, you actually get to play as these, like, historical Cooper characters, and that's so cool. This game, like, has no reason to be as fantastic as it is. It was made by a different studio years after the fact. Like, mascot characters were kind of dead, and out comes this game is great. I don't even know if a lot of people knew there was a 4th Sly Cooper game. It's kind of like people forget there's a 4th Jak and Daxter game, but we don't talk about that one. That's a bad one. Meanwhile, Ratchet & Clank has been able to get like 17 games. I hope that movie / maybe a TV show of Sly Cooper that they've been trying to get made for what feels like a decade at this point. I hope it comes out, because then maybe we'll get a new Sly Cooper game, and God, I want that so badly. Number 1 is, to me, the best Grand Theft Auto clone, and that's Sleeping Dogs. I don't know if it was the environment or what it was about that game, but that game drew me in way more than a Grand Theft Auto has ever done. I think Sleeping Dogs is probably the most popular game that's on this list. I don't know if I would call Sleeping Dogs underappreciated. It you know, got a bunch of DLC and was released on multiple platforms. I think it did all right for itself. But it seems like it was pretty quickly forgotten. I just want people to talk about it again because I want another one. Similar to Sly Cooper, I think Donnie Yen, of all people, is trying to work on a Sleeping Dogs project, which would be cool because it would mean we get another Sleeping Dogs game, most likely. It being set in a completely different part of the world, it being set in like sort of Shanghai, I think it was Shanghai, gave me sort of the escapism that I want from video games usually, where Grand Theft Auto was like, I could look outside and be like, look, it's Grand Theft Auto. I can't do that with China. Number one on my most unappreciated games is probably, objectively, the worst game on this list. And that's the beautifully titled PlayStation AllStars Battle Royale. I mean, for starters, ain't no Battle Royales before this game. This game started a trend. Let's ignore that movie called Battle Royale. That doesn't count. It was also a book. So, PlayStation AllStars got some flack, not completely unwarranted, for kind of being a Smash Brothers clone, which it definitely is. But the thing is, Smash Brothers isn't, it's not so much a clone of Smash Brothers as that's just sort of a genre, like an arena brawler, I guess is what you'd call it, because there have been many games, some fairly popular since PlayStation All-Stars have come and gone, that have used the Smash Brothers formula and actually they're somewhat popular, and they're not getting flack for being a Smash Brothers clone. I'm sure they did at the start. Games like Brawlhalla, for example. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is, for starters, a mouthful and a terrible title. They should have done something different. And yeah, they kind of have a problem of they have a lot of kind of bland mascots, but they're not all bland. They're just maybe harder to work with in this type of game. I say, who cares if you're a Smash Brothers clone? Because the honest truth is, there's room for more than one game in that genre. And it's sort of like, you'll only be compared to them if you're also bad. I think if this game was like a really good, again, arena brawler, I don't think people would care about the comparisons as much. And I think this game would have flourished. I would love to see a second attempt at this game because, well, I'm a little PlayStation boy. Not that I don't enjoy Smash Brothers. I do enjoy Smash Brothers, but it's not really a secret that the PlayStation characters kind of stand out to me and speak to me more than most Nintendo characters do. And I know I'm not alone in that sentiment. Would I change the genre? Probably not. Maybe tweak it. I really don't know what you would do. It's a difficult task ahead to make this game. But like I said, other games in the genre have come out and have done fine. So it is doable. So why not try? Why not try one more time? It's not like you have to fight for the licenses to the characters, at least to begin with, because you own all of them. Or most of them, anyway. And even since the first attempt, there's been some real good PlayStation characters. Like, he existed before the game, but, like, put Kiryu in a game. Or more realistically, put Aloy. Get Sora in there before Smash Brothers. That'll get the kids playing. Putting Sora in your video game. I'm gonna say that the game I think needs more love, and that I also would like to see a second one of the most of the entire decade is PlayStation All-Stars. Okay, so I can't end this without talking about Lisa. As you can tell by the different getup, different day. Totally forgot about this game. Lisa the Painful might be one of the most underrated games ever. It is so dark and bleak, but also somehow also one of the funniest games I have ever played. I think it only came out on Steam like way back in 2014. A lot of people compare it to Undertale for some reason. I think it's just because it's like an indie pixel RPG. I don't know. They're not really related, if you ask me. But yeah, I've seen the game described as a tragic comedy. It's not quite. It's bleaker than black comedy. It's tragic comedy. I mean, today when I remembered the game, I was listening to the soundtrack. I was watching like theory stuff and plot stuff, and I just forgot how much I love that game. And I'm legitimately angry with myself that I made a whole video and sat down and wrote and thought about 10 games that are underappreciated, only to forget one so great. So I had to quickly add this to the video that Lisa the Painful is, not only does it belong on this list, I might, as much as I had a lot to say about PlayStation AllStars, I might put it above that. Like, this game, it needs more eyes on it because, as far as I know, there was sort of a follow-up, but there hasn't been, like, I don't even know if the creators went and made a new game. Like, because back in the day, like, the Kickstarter made, like, $16,000. It's not a lot of money. But it came out, and God, it's really good. So, and I think you can buy it for, like, maybe $10. It's pretty cheap. Go buy it right now. Everyone's got one of them Steam accounts. Lisa the Painful. If you care to look it up, it's technically the second game in the series. First, there's just Lisa. You can just read up on that game or watch some stuff online about it. Lisa the Painful is really where it's at. It's kind of it's sort of related, but it's unrelated enough that you don't really need it, in my opinion. I didn't play the original, and I was fine. Go play Lisa the Painful, or at the very least, listen to the soundtrack. Just look up a trailer for the game, because honestly, you don't want... This is a game that you want few things spoiled. Just enjoy the ride.